All right. House Resolution 148. So the committee will come to order. Pursuant to notice, we meet today to mark up 4 bipartisan measures, and without objection, all members may have 5 days to submit statements for the record and extraneous material on any of today's business. As all members were notified yesterday, we intend to consider today's measures en bloc. And so without objection, the following items previously provided to the members of the House will be considered en bloc and are considered as read. First, House Resolution 148, calling on the government of Iran to fulfill their promises of assistance in the case of Robert Levinson. Ross-Layton Amendment 31 in the nature of a substitute offered on behalf of herself and on behalf of Mr. Deutsch, which is the text adopted by the Subcommittee on the Middle East and North Africa on February 11th. And then we have House Resolution 551, recognizing the importance of the United States-Israel economic relationship. Also, H.R. 3924, the Global Development Lab Act, along with the Castro Amendment 218 in the nature of a substitute. And lastly, we have H.R. 4403, the Enhancing Overseas Traveler Vetting Act. And after recognizing myself and the ranking member, Mr. Engel, I'll be pleased to recognize any member seeking recognition to speak on these measures. So let's start with House Resolution 148, calling on the government of Iran to fulfill their promises of assistance. This in the case of Robert Levinson. And I want to thank Chairman Ross-Layton for quickly marking this, and I thank Mr. Deutsch for his steadfast dedication to Mr. Levinson's cause. This calls on Iran to assist in the case of Bob Levinson, and last month 4 U.S. hostages held by Iran were released as part of a prisoner swap. Absent from the celebration was the family of Bob Levinson. The father of 7 remains the longest-held U.S. hostage in history, and with many unanswered questions about his location and current well-being, we must continue to press the administration to do more. In testimony before this committee, Mr. Levinson's son highlighted the importance of our maintaining a public focus on his father's case. He argued that while one hearing might generate some press, we need continued action to keep his father's fate at the forefront, and frankly, it is hard to remember a time when Iran didn't have U.S. citizens in its prisons. As Bob's son testified, no family should ever have to go through what we all are going through. So we'll continue to work to bring Mr. Levinson and other American hostages home. Then we have House Resolution 551, recognizing the importance of the United States-Israel economic relationship, Mr. Ted Lieu's bill, and this emphasizes the strong history of that economic cooperation and encourages us to build on our shared entrepreneurial spirit and drive to collaborate in a range of areas, from energy to water in terms of offsetting drought, to agriculture, to medicine, and to neurotechnology. Despite Israel's security threats remaining severe, Tel Aviv, once a target of suicide bombers and Scud missiles, is now a bustling city of dot-coms and biotechs and mobile companies. We can learn much from each other, such as how Israel treats and reuses 70% of its wastewater for agriculture. As a member from the drought-stricken state of California, I certainly see great promise in a partnership with Israel that explores ways to conserve water and to desalinate water. And I want to thank Representative Lieu for introducing this resolution that has strong bipartisan support, and I'm proud to be an original co-sponsor along with Ranking Member Engel of Ted Lieu's legislation. H.R. 4403, Enhancing Overseas Traveler Vetting Act. I acknowledge Mr. Hurd for his work on this. The Homeland Security Committee's bipartisan task force on combating terrorist and foreign fighter travel highlighted the lack of any comprehensive global database of foreign fighter identities. The task force found that the U.S. and other countries instead rely on a patchwork system for exchanging extremist identities, and that this weak arrangement, as they call it, increases the odds that foreign fighters will be able to cross borders undetected. This legislation authorizes the Secretaries of the Department of State and Homeland Security to develop open-source software platforms to vet travelers against terrorist watch lists and law enforcement databases. It permits the open-source software to be shared with foreign governments and multilateral organizations like Interpol. So I thank Homeland Security Chairman McCall for his leadership as well on this bill. H.R. 3924, Global Development Lab Act of 2015. This is the last bill we consider. And extreme poverty breeds insecurity. It undermines the economic security and health interests of the United States. Yet for too long, we have relied upon approaches that yield mediocre results. The lab represents a new approach to development. It embraces science and technology. It rewards innovation. It utilizes partnerships. And it opens the door for new ideas from unexpected places. It utilizes a pay-for-success model in which a development challenge is identified, proposals are submitted, and financing is made available after success has been demonstrated. So I thank Representative Castro for introducing this important bipartisan measure. And I now recognize the ranking member for his remarks.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for calling this markup. I note that in the last few weeks, the President has signed a number of measures into law that this committee advanced, and that's a real great reflection of the way we work across the aisle to get real results. That should always be our focus, and I'm glad we're going to advance these 4 measures in that vein and keep the committee's work chugging along. Let me start with Mr. Deutsch's resolution. Americans breathed a collective sigh of relief when 5 of our fellow citizens were released by Iran earlier this year. But when it comes to American citizens being wrongly held, there are obviously no partial victories. So the fact that at least 2 more Americans are still missing or detained in Iran means that we need to stay laser-focused on getting these people home. One of those missing is retired FBI agent Robert Levinson, and we've mentioned him a great many times with all the hearings we've done on Iran. He disappeared in Iran in 2007, and it's been 5 years since his family has received any evidence that he's still alive. As in so many cases, we've heard a lot of promises from the Iranian government that they'll assist in locating Mr. Levinson. And again, as in so many cases, the Iranians have failed to follow through. This is a slap in the face to our diplomatic efforts with Iran, and it is a cruel affront to the Levinson family, who have already dealt with so much pain and heartbreak. This resolution calls on Iran's leaders to live up to their word and to help us find Mr. Levinson. I want to thank Mr. Deutsch for offering this measure and for his hard work on trying to bring Mr. Levinson home. Mr. Levinson is a constituent of his, and he's been a tireless champion in trying to get him back. I wholeheartedly support this resolution, and I thank Mr. Deutsch for his good work. I also support the measure sponsored by Mr. Liu and Mr. Poe, which recognizes the importance of the economic ties between the United States and our ally Israel. We often look at Israel through a security prism, but our bond with Israel, of course, is much more dynamic than that. We've had a free trade agreement with Israel for more than 3 decades. In that time, trade between our countries has increased tenfold. Our economic ties have been good for both countries, creating jobs and driving growth. Over the years, the United States and Israel have established a number of institutions to help strengthen these ties even further. The U.S.-Israel Binational Science Foundation, the Industrial Research and Development Foundation, the Agricultural Research and Development Fund. This resolution calls for even greater cooperation in energy, water, agriculture, medicine, neurotechnology, and cybersecurity. It encourages the administration to hold regular expanded economic dialogues and to push for more private-public partnerships. I'm happy to co-sponsor this measure, and I again thank Mr. Poe and Mr. Liu for bringing it forward. Next, let me commend Mr. Castro for his hard work on the Global Development Lab Act, which will strengthen one of our best tools for promoting new innovations in global development efforts. The Development Lab was established within USAID to help develop and deploy poverty reduction technologies more widely, and at a lower cost. The lab works with NGOs, corporations, and universities to bring in the best ideas and stay on the cutting edge of development. It's also expanding USAID's impact through a public-private dollar-for-dollar matching program that allows us to scale these innovations up without expanding USAID's budget. We're seeing real results. In 2014, the lab invested in 362 new solutions that touch nearly 14 million people around the world. For example, the lab funded an initiative aimed at producing more food where fresh water is hard to come by. The Securing Water for Food Grant Challenge led to a system that makes seawater or brackish water usable for drinking or agriculture. It consumes so little energy that the cost to use it is low, even in areas off the power grid. This is what we mean when we talk about innovation. This bill would build on the lab's success by creating new authorities for the lab to expand and manage its partnerships. It will give the lab greater flexibility for hiring experts on a project-by-project basis, and it will allow the lab to award small, targeted grants that have proven so effective in supporting healthcare providers. I commend Mr. Castro for his hard work on this very good bill. It makes a good initiative better, and I'm pleased to support it. And lastly, I'm pleased that we're taking up the Enhancing Overseas Traveler Vetting Act. One of the best ways to crack down on violent extremism is to catch terrorists trying to cross borders, not just our borders, but borders around the world. The bill would allow the State Department and the Department of Homeland Security to develop open-source software to vet travelers crossing borders and sound the alarm if a terrorist is trying to sneak through. That software could then be shared with allies, partners, and multilateral organizations like the European Union. Existing safeguards would ensure that this software is developed in collaboration with our intelligence community and that it only gets into the right hands. This is an innovative way to help ensure that terrorists don't slip through the cracks, and I'm happy to support it. Again, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Engel. We go to Mr. Smith in New Jersey.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I'd like to thank you, Chairman Royce and Ranking Member Elliott Engel, for marking up these 4 bipartisan bills, and especially for marking up HRES 148. And I want to thank again Ted Deutsch for authoring this resolution, which keeps the spotlight and the pressure on both the administration and Iran to resolve the case of missing American Robert Levinson. Robert Levinson is now, as you pointed out, the longest held hostage in American history. His daughter and son-in-law used to live in my district in Monmouth County, along with his 6 other children, numerous grandchildren, as well as his wife, Christine. They all desperately await word of his whereabouts. Mr. Levinson, as we all know, is a retired FBI agent who disappeared on a business trip to Iran in 2007. His captors last released photos and video of him back in 2011. Mr. Levinson is elderly, suffers from diabetes, and appeared sickly in the last photos in which he was seen. He has been captive for almost 9 years and needs to be immediately returned to his broken-hearted family. I urge my colleagues to show their continued commitment to bringing Mr. Levinson home by unanimously supporting this resolution. And I ask unanimous consent that comments on each of the other bills pending before the committee be made a part of the record.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Mr. Castro of Texas.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you for bringing my bill, H.R. 3924, for markup today. I want to say thank you, first of all, to my co-sponsor, Representative McCall of Austin. Thank you and your staff for all of your hard work, as well as staff of the committee. I know there's a lot of work that goes into preparing these bills. And most of all, thank you to USAID for developing the Global Development Lab and now working to improve it. It essentially democratizes problem solving and crowdsources ideas and applications to combat poverty and our greatest poverty challenges throughout the world, whether it's access to clean water, access to electricity, immunizations, birth defects, any of those grave challenges that are faced by many countries throughout the world, this makes sure that there is a competition of ideas and applications to solve these problems. And so I'm very proud of the work that USAID has done, and very proud also that this is a bipartisan bill. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Castro. Mr. McCall of Texas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I also want to thank my colleague from Texas, Mr. Castro, for his leadership and the staff for working so hard on this. It's important legislation. It's bipartisan. The Global Development Lab will harness the U.S. entrepreneurial spirit to create cost-effective, sustainable solutions to global poverty. As we've seen time and time again, creating opportunity in impoverished countries is a powerful catalyst for our foreign policy abroad. And as chairman of the House Homeland Security Committee, I know that this legislation will help us fight terrorism by providing the most vulnerable with the means to create a better future for themselves and their loved ones, rather than falling victim to the false narrative of extremists who prey on the impoverished and who fill these vacuums and turn them into safe havens for terrorists. So again, I want to thank Mr. Castro for his hard work and ask that the committee support passage of this bill.
Mr. Deutsch of Florida.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, I'd like to thank you and the ranking member for holding this markup. I want to thank Mr. Liu and Mr. Poe for their important reaffirmation of the many ways that the United States and Israel both benefit from expanded economic cooperation. I want to commend Mr. Castro and Mr. McCall for the Global Development Lab Act and the innovation developed by that lab, which will be enhanced and expanded. And I'm proud to support the Enhancing Overseas Traveler Vetting Act. I want to especially thank my friend, Chairman Emeritus Ross Leighton, for introducing the Levinson resolution with me for the past several years, along with our Florida colleagues, Congresswoman Wasserman Schultz and Congressman Diaz-Balart. And I thank the many members of this committee who have co-sponsored this resolution for their continued support, and to the chairman and ranking member and Mr. Smith and others who have spoken powerfully this morning about Bob. Many of you have heard me speak about my constituent, Bob Levinson, many times over the past 6 years. Today I'll be brief. The recent return of our American citizens from Iran brought renewed focus to Bob's case. While we celebrated the joyous reunion of the Americans who had been held hostage who were returned home, unfortunately, we did not, and the Levinson family has yet to feel that same joy. 2 weeks ago, the Middle East Subcommittee held a markup of the resolution where we were joined by Bob's wife, Christine, and his eldest son, Dan. By passing this resolution today and sending it to the floor of the House, we have the opportunity to remind Christine, Dan, and Bob's 6 other children that we won't forget about Bob. Mr. Chairman, 9 years is too long. It's too many anniversaries. It's too many birthdays, weddings, the births of grandchildren for Bob to miss. Bob must come home now. This message is resonating from Washington around the country and to the community that I proudly represent in South Florida. On Saturday, March 5th, Bob's own community in South Florida will come together for a rally in support of the Levinson family to send a united, resolute message that Bob must come home. And to those around the country watching this at home today, I encourage them to tweet using the hashtag #WhatAboutBob to keep Bob's name and his story front and center. And by passing this resolution, Mr. Chairman, we as members of the United States Congress reaffirm that we will never stop fighting until Bob is home with his family. I appreciate the support, and I yield back.
Thank you. Thank you very, very much. I appreciate that, Mr. Ted Deutsch. We now go to Mr. Steve Shabbat of Ohio.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'll be brief because my colleagues have already spoken much better than I could about this. I want to commend both Mr. Deutsch and Ms. Ross Leighton for their unrelenting determination to do everything within their power to assist the Levinson family and to try to get Bob home. I mean, to think 9 days would be a long time, 9 weeks, 9 months has been 9 years, and it's incomprehensible how hard this must have been on him and is on his family. So, and I know the administration has repeatedly called for the safe return of Mr. Levinson, but this should always be at the forefront of any talks. When we ever talk with Iran, this should be discussed, whatever it is, and I would encourage that to occur. And I would also like to rise in support of HRS 551, the resolution with respect to U.S. Israeli economic relations. They're obviously one of our strongest, if not our strongest allies on this globe in ensuring a comprehensive and sustainable alliance and increasing trade ties, economic dialogue. This is all for the better, will improve the relationship between our two nations, which is one of the most critical relationships that we have. So I want to thank all our colleagues involved in both these, and I'd like to yield back.
Do any of our Democrat colleagues seek recognition at this point? We'll go to Mr. Mark Meadows of North Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for your leadership. And I would gladly yield the balance of my time to the gentleman from Texas, Mr. McCall.
Mr. McCall is recognized.
And I thank Mr. Meadows for yielding time, Mr. Chairman. Ranking Member, I want to thank you for collaborating with my committee on Homeland Security on H.R. 4403, Enhancing Overseas Traveler Vetting Act. It's a bipartisan bill passed unanimously out of my committee. It implements an important recommendation of the Task Force on Combating Terrorist and Foreign Fighter Travel. The bipartisan panel found that many of our foreign partners lack crucial tripwires to detect extremists when they're moving across borders. Without adequate screening and watch-listing systems, these countries are letting jihadists slip through their fingers. This puts America and our allies at risk. We cannot allow foreign fighters to crisscross the globe undetected. This legislation will help our most vulnerable partners put in place vetting systems quickly rather than taking years to develop their own. We must shut down the jihadi superhighway to and from terrorist safe havens overseas. And this bill that we are considering will help do exactly that. I commend also Representative Hurd, who is on the task force for writing this legislation, and I urge my colleagues here on the Foreign Affairs Committee to support it. With that, I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Mike McCall. Do any other members seek recognition? Hearing none, the question occurs on the items considered en bloc. All those in favor say aye. Aye. No? For those opposed? In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the measures considered en bloc are agreed to. Without objection, the measures considered en bloc are ordered favorably reported as amended, and staff is directed to make any technical and conforming changes. Also, without objection, the chair is authorized to seek House consideration of those measures under suspension of the rules. And that concludes our business for today. I want to thank Ranking Member Elliott Engel and all of our committee members for their contributions and their assistance to today's markup. The committee stands adjourned.